Bright comet headed towards Earth could be visible with the naked eye. The incoming comet Tsushinsan Atlas might become as brilliant and bright as Venus during its close approach to Earth this fall, potentially making it visible to the naked eye. And this is the image by Gianluca Massi from the Virtual Telescope Project of this comet. In a year in which we have already been treated to the Great North American solar eclipse in April 8th, and one of the greatest displays of northern lights in the past 500 years in May, what other amazing celestial attractions might 2024 have in store for us? How about a bright naked eye comet? Over the last couple of years, two comets have made headlines in the mainstream media. Early February 2023, Comet C 2022 E3, informally called the Great Green Comet, passing near Earth, and then during the past month, Comet 12P Pons Brooks drew attention because of its propensity for experiencing sudden flare-up in brightness and appearing to spout gaseous appendages resembling horns, thus giving rise to the moniker the Devil's Comet. The only problem so far, as the person on the street was concerned, was that both comets are difficult to see unless you were located under dark, non-lit, polluted sky, and even though through good binoculars or a small telescope, both were rather unimpressive, appearing as nothing more than faint fuzzy blobs of light. Bright and easy to see. The only problem so far as the person on the street was concerned was that both comets were difficult to see unless you were located under a dark, non-light polluted sky, and even though good binoculars or small telescope both were rather unimpressive, appearing as nothing more than faint fuzzy blobs of light. But by the end of this summer, we may have a good idea as to whether we'll have a bright or easy to see naked eye comet gracing our early autumn evening sky. The comet in question is C 2023 A3, Tsushinsan Atlas comet, discovered by the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, ATLAS for short, in South Africa, February 22nd, 2023. ATLAS is a robotic early warning system developed specifically for detecting near-Earth asteroids a few weeks to just days before they might impact our Earth. Originally thought to be an asteroid, it was later determined that the same object was photographed 6 weeks earlier by the Purple Mountain Observatory in east of Ninjiang, China. It has since been determined to actually be an incoming comet. When the comet was first sighted, it was far out beyond the orbits of Jupiter, some 680 million miles or 1.09 billion kilometers from the Sun. But on September 27 of this year, Tsushinsan, the Atlas, will be making its closest approach to the Sun, coming to within 36 million miles or 58 million kilometers. That also happens to be the average distance of the planet that is closest to the Sun, which is Mercury. And just over 2 weeks later, October 12, the comet will pass just 44 million miles from Earth. These figures suggest that the comet might brighten to second or possibly even first magnitude and could develop a notable tail that could make for an eye-catching sight in the western evening sky during mid-October 2024. It could also be a dud. Unfortunately, there is a caveat. Calculations show that Tsushinsan Atlas has an orbital eccentricity of 1.000118, meaning that it is just a first-timer coming directly from the Oort cloud, a spherical shell of icy space debris scientists theorize to be situated far beyond the outer limits of our solar system and thought to contain billions or even trillions of comets. Comets originating from the Oort cloud have never passed near the Sun before, and their nuclei are coated with very volatile materials that vaporize far from the Sun, creating short-lived surges in brightness, that as these comets get nearer to the Sun, their brightening slows and even stops completely. Most, though admittedly not all, comets originate from the Oort cloud, usually end up being duds. Typically, as these comets cross the orbit of Mars, their steady brightening trend starts to falter, similar to the marathon runner at the 20-mile mark, hitting the wall, so to speak. In the case of a comet having emerged from the Oort cloud, a sudden decline in brightening may be signaling that it ultimately will end up underperforming. Not until midsummer, Comet Tsuchinshan Atlas will not get to that point in its orbit until late July. If it then continues to steadily brighten beyond that time, then there's a good chance it will evolve into an eye-catching sight, but more likely if its brightening trend suddenly slows or even comes to a halt, all bets for a good show are off. Until then, all we can do is wait and watch. Unfortunately, we here in the Northern Hemisphere will not be able to check on the status of Comet Tsuchinshan Atlas during the summer because it will be situated much too far south to be accessible with telescopes. Those living in far southern locations such as Australia, New Zealand, and South America, however, will be able to track it in the morning sky before sunrise. It will need to rely on reports from these parts of the globe to tell us whether the comet is on track to possibly become a bright object. Dusty reflections hold the key to a good show. Another thing that could work in our favor is that the geometry of the comet relative to the Sun and Earth places it almost in between the Sun and Earth around October 8, creating a phenomenon known as a forward scattering of sunlight. If the comet is particularly dusty, dust particles ejected from the comet nucleus would preferentially scatter sunlight in a forward direction and could cause a dramatic upsurge in the comet's brightness. To this end, there are two comets that Tsuchinshan Atlas might be compared to, which suddenly brightened up thanks to forward scattering. The first was Comet Skellerup-Maristany C1927X1, which briefly became very bright in December 1927. Forward scattering of light December 18, 1927, allowed the comet to be seen during daylight by virtue of blocking the light of the sun with one's hand, and has since been ranked as among the greatest comets of all time. The other comet was Comet McNaught, also known as the Great Comet of 2007, and given the designation C2006P1, and was the brightest comet in over 40 years, easily visible to the naked eye for observers in the Southern Hemisphere in January-February 2007. At its brightest January 12, 2007, this comet appeared at least twice as bright as Venus, and like Skellerup-Maristany, was visible worldwide in broad daylight next to the Sun. Its extreme brightness was also attributed to forward scattering. Some calculations suggest that the Tsuchinshan Atlas comet might become as brilliant as Venus around October 8, 2024, although in the sky, like the comets of 1929 and 2007, it will also be very near to the position of the Sun. In the days that follow, however, Tsuchinshan Atlas comet should sweep rapidly towards north and become well placed for viewing in the western sky by mid-October. Although it will now be fading as it recedes from both the Sun and Earth, it hopefully will be bright enough to be well seen with the naked eye, perhaps accompanied by a notable tail as well. No guarantees. There are no guarantees. In the past there have been comets that seemingly promised a great show that failed to live up to expectations. Comet Kohoutek of 1973-74 is a good example. Conversely, there have been comets that did not look like they would perform well, then ended up unexpectedly becoming celestial showpieces. Comet Neowise surprised everyone during the summer of 2020 by putting on a good show. The legendary comet expert Dr. Fred Whippy perhaps said it best when he said, "If you must bet, bet on a horse, not a comet." In the meantime, fingers crossed for Comet Tsuchinshan Atlas. Stay tuned to space.com for future updates. This was originally on space.com and is by Joe Rao on Live Science. Live Science at space.com, as we know, our sister blogs. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. My Patreon account, the daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.